and welcome to this year's Tour de France. My name is Dick Henderson, and alongside me is Jim Jones, our expert commentator. First off, we start with the team presentation. This is the Saxo Bank team. They got Andy and Frank Schleck as their so-called captains. What are your expectations to them, Jim?
Well, I don't know. I think they might do well in the first week with Cancellara front. And next up is Team Radio Shack. They got Lance Armstrong, Clurden, Leiphammer, and there's a lot of very good riders there. And I think they'll do well in this year's tour.
Yes, and next is the Cervelo test team. They got Thor Hushovd and Carlos Sastre as their main captains. And then there is the Columbia High Road team. They got Mark Cavendish, the massive sprinter from Isle of Man, and they also got like Michael Rogers. They do have him also. Next up is Liquigas. They got Ivan Basso as their main rider. I guess they will be riding for him in this year's tour.
And there's the Rabobank team. They got 3 cards to play on. There's Oscar Freire and Dennis Manchoff, and then the young rider Robert Gassink. And there's also Katusha. They got the strong rider Rob McEwen. I think he'll be a good contender to the green jersey this year.
And then there is the Sky professional cycling team. They got the Norwegian rider Edvald Bosenhagen and their main captain Bradley Wiggins. He will be competing for the GC this year. And then there is Astana with last year's winner Alberto Contador, and he will be getting some help from Alexander Vinokourov.
And then there's the Belgium team, Quickstep. They've got Zambon and Sylvain Chavanel, and I guess they'll get some stage wins. And then there's another Belgium team. It's Lotto, and they've got Leif Oost for the Cobblestone.
And next up is BMC Racing team. They got the ex-champion Alessandro Ballan, and they also got the current champion, world champion that is, Cadel Evans, who will be competing for the general classification. Next up is another American team. It's Garmin Slipstream. They got the sprinter Tyler Farrar, who got his first Grand Tour victory last year in the Vuelta, and they also got the GC rider Christian van der Velde.
And then there's Castepan. They got Alejandro Valverde, and then there's another Spanish team, Euskaltel. They got Samuel Sanchez for the GC, and then there's the young rider Igor Anton.
France is the next team on the schedule. They got the French rider Christophe Lemevel, who was number 10 in the GC last year, and they also got Sandy Cassar. And then there's Milram, who will be competing for the green jersey with Gerald Ciolek.
And then there's Agile Desert, and they've got the Italian rider Ronan Losentini, and I guess he'll be riding for some hill stages and maybe the classification. And next up there's Cofidis. They got Trent Murray, as he might go for the general multiple classification, and they'll go for some breakaways.
And the last team on the schedule is B-Box Telecom. They will probably be going as Cofidis for some breakaways, probably a stage win. They got Thomas Vauclair. And then, ladies and gentlemen, it's the first stage of this year's Tour de France. It's the Prologue, and this is how it went.
They started early today in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and the American rider David Zabriskie took the early lead, and then 20 minutes after, Tony Martin took the lead instead of him.
But then it was set for the GC contenders, the big shots. Also riders like Cadel Evans, Lance Armstrong, Alberto Contador, the Schleck brothers, Bradley Wiggins, you name it, they all were ready to ride. But it was kind of a big shock for everybody in the cycling world today, because it was a French rider, Sylvain Chavanel, who took the stage win on this year's Tour de France, first stage. What do you think, Jim, about this kind of a shock? We could say that, right?
Yes, indeed. I think people were suspecting riders like Lance Armstrong and Bradley Wiggins, riders like that, to be standing on the top of the podium today.
And with that said, we will thank you all for watching, and hope to see you tomorrow on the first real stage of this year's Tour de France. Arrivederci!